Hello there, everybody. This is John Herrera with Muni Temps and the City Speak podcast video blog. Today's subject is Millennials, Reinventing Government from the Inside Out. This blog article is not about politics or about reinventing government politically from the outside in. It is also not about state and federal government administration. We're just talking about local government administration. Plus, I'm not going to be reading any report card or complete report card on how baby boomers did during the last 50 or more years as they've been in charge of local government in the United States. No, this blog is about millennials and about the opportunities that you have to take over where baby boomers left off. And there's so many opportunities to improve local government. Whether it's at the city, the county, or a special district, or any other municipal level, I'm going to talk to you all about how we have to continue to respect that dichotomy between politics and administration, while still being able to make positive change in municipal organizations, again, from the inside out. There are three main points that I'm going to be talking about today to you millennials. I want to talk about how millennials can reinvent local government, making change specifically in the various municipalities in the United States. The 3 points are as follows. Number one, baby boomers had a good ride, but scoot over boomers, it's millennials' turn to ride. Number two, there's a need for an entrepreneurial spirit to re-energize government organizations. And the point number three that we're going to be discussing is there's a need for professional re-engineering of government, because the need for improvement in local government has never been greater. First point is baby boomers scoot over. It's the millennials' turn. You know, by age 55, most municipal employees have retired from local government. These are leaving behind many positions in management and leadership so that the new generation that we call millennials can take over. So in this blog article, I've written it for millennials, the guys and gals who may already be holding leadership positions in local government. But you know, wait a second, millennials aren't really that young anymore. A lot of them anyways, that were born in 1980. By definition, if you were born after 1980, you're considered a millennial. So many of you millennials are now hitting 40 years old. You're really not that young anymore. Means you've already been in local government for a long period of time. Millennials, you've lived through a lot. You've lived through the .com bust, remember that? You lived through the Y2K, right? The year 2000, when we thought that computers were going to be failing, remember that? You've also lived through that 9/11 tragedy some 19 years ago. And now in the year 2020, you're living through and witnessing and having to manage through this COVID-19 pandemic. Unprecedented times for sure, aren't they? But one very important point that I'd like to highlight for millennials is that you do not need to adopt the fears and phobias of baby boomers while working in local government. This is your time, millennials. Be yourself. Don't act like baby boomers. As millennials, you have your own mission. You have your own core values, and you have your own vision for the future life you want for yourself and for your children, if you have any. You have now been handed the baton, and you're now at the helm of many different government organizations and agencies. These are the ships in the armada of any one of 100,000 local government agencies throughout the United States. And of these 100,000 municipal agencies, about 20,000 make up what we call cities and towns and villages, incorporated cities as we talk about. My dear millennials, you're going to be working in local government for another 20 years or more. So therefore, you've got lots of work to do and a lot of improvements that you can make in local government. But why am I talking about this? Well, because a career in local government, public service, can be very challenging when you're in positions of leadership. Let's talk again briefly about the politics administration dichotomy. We talked about it at the last episode of City Speak. Remember how we talked about how Woodrow Wilson, back when he was a college professor, before he became, I think he was the 42nd president of the United States, he said that there needed to be a separation between politics and administration. So municipal employees, we've learned and accepted, stay out of politics. That's not your place. That's the gorilla cage that we talked about. Stay inside of the administration side. That is, from the level of city manager or chief executive officer on down. But I do urge you, stand up for thorough discussion of organizational issues. Don't ever sweep anything under the rug, as they say. Stand up for thorough analysis of management proposals to ensure transparency and accountability. Stand up for inclusionary consideration of public policy issues. Furthermore, continue to stand up and advocate for transparency and accountability throughout all the decision making that goes on in the municipal organization, from the city manager or chief executive down. Continue to stand up until the city manager or the top administrative manager tells you that they've heard you. That's the main thing you want to make sure. Don't be afraid to speak up respectfully, professionally within the field and realm of public administration. Even if the governing body, whether that be the city council, the board of directors, or whatever, has already decided to go in a different direction, at least you've made your point to the chief executive of your municipal organization. And that's the least that you need to do. You know, as an example of this, I think about the 1982 movie, The Man from Snowy River. Some of you may remember that. Remember Jim Craig? He was quite the horseman. Anyways, Jim Craig finds himself working at the Harrison's ranch. That was the big rich guy, right, in the area there in Australia. And I guess Jim Craig gets in some kind of political discussion. He gets dragged into it, and he makes a statement: nobody can tame the mountains. And because of that, he got crosshairs with Mr. Harrison. And therefore, when Jim Craig goes back to the bunker and the ranch boss tells Jim Craig, "You're not going to be riding with us tomorrow." And Jim Craig says, "Why? What did I do?" And he seemed to be a little naive of what he had gotten himself into. The politics, even there at the ranch, he got involved in. The ranch boss says, "I don't make the orders, but when I give them, that's the end of it." So again, you as a public administrator, as a municipal manager or director, you do all you can to advance transparency and accountability. But once it gets up to the level of the chief executive, the city manager, that's the end of it. As millennials in positions of authority, we have a responsibility to keep standing up for best practices in local government, for maintaining professional standards in local government. It is possible, even though we work in municipal organizations that are political organizations. But I say that to do this only within the professional side of the politics administration dichotomy. Never venture into the gorilla cage that we call the elected officials area. Municipal employees must stay out of politics. Millennials can change government from the inside out. I've said that, and I'm saying it again. Politicians, however, they can and do make change in local government. change from the outside in. However, their ability to make this change is limited. There's term limits and other restrictions. Also, these elected officials are sometimes subject to powerful interests, special interests that can influence the elected officials that even have the best intentions. So municipal employees who hold management and leadership positions are in a unique position to affect even more change than the elected officials because they make change from the inside out. Let's talk briefly about the status quo. Status quo is not allowing change to happen in the municipality, in the local government. But yet, as millennials with education and experience, you learn that there are new paradigms, best practices, professional standards, better way of doing things. You have to advance these notions. You cannot just take the easy route and let whoever speaks the loudest get their way in local government. So I ask you the question, are you being forced to abide by the status quo? Maybe right now, are you being forced to abide by the status quo? Well, if you're a millennial and you've been in local government for any length of time, you've likely become familiar with the bias towards the status quo. Local governments and government in general have traditionally held fast to this type of thinking. They say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's the way we've always done it here. These are typical comments you'll hear from, especially from baby boomers and longtime government employees that you run into during your career. So expect to face resistance if you want to introduce new paradigms to change the status quo. I'll share with you briefly, when I was working at a city, I had my city manager didn't like what I was presenting as a new paradigm. He didn't appreciate my progressive management ideas that I was learning as part of my graduate program. He said to me in a really loud voice after I tried to insist on best practices, he said to me, "John, why don't you go practice your paradigm shifts somewhere else?" Now, I didn't get fired. I knew how to play that game. But the point is that there's a lot of individuals in position of authority, especially baby boomers, who don't want to make a change. It's just so much easier to maintain the status quo. Or also, maybe it's not that it's easier, maybe that there's forces at play that we're not aware of. So we have to leave it ultimately up to the city manager and whoever the chief executive is. Now, I've always been one who accepts the chain of command. Yes, I'm a baby boomer, one of the younger baby boomers, but I'm still a baby boomer. I was born in 1963 and I'm 57 years old. So I firmly believe that municipal employees should stay out of politics and follow the chain of command. I've said that before. However, within the realm of administration, what I'm saying to you millennials, by all means, advance the practice of public administration. It's your craft. It's not just your career. It's your craft, and you need to perfect it with the goal of improving public service and local government and the delivery of municipal services by your municipal organization to the communities that you serve. Now, this is risky business. It really is. And you may have to risk your neck, as my MPA, one of my MPA professors warned me about. He said, if you want to make a change or for the better in your local government, you're going to have to risk your neck. But I'll tell you what, it's worth the effort. Every one of you millennials are leaving footprints on this earth. Even through social media, you're leaving a digital footprint as well. Wouldn't you rather leave a footprint and show that you existed, that you made a difference in this world, than just tiptoe around to not make any waves? I'm not saying to be a troublemaker. I'm saying to practice the craft of public administration. And it's something you really need to think about. And that's what I'm encouraging. Millennials reinventing government from the inside out. That's the charge that I'm suggesting to you. That's certainly what I did during my career. But again, if we learn the rules of our craft as public administrators, we can champion change that will improve the quality of life for all community stakeholders, not just the few that get themselves chummied up in the certain right places in our local organization. We need to do what's for the betterment of the entire community, all the stakeholders, and the efficient and effective delivery of municipal organizations to serve them. During my 30-year career in city government, I had to face managers who hid behind the statement, we're a government. We can't make those changes, that kind of mantra that they would have. It's the status quo. Anytime I made recommendations to improve operations in my city, I faced responses like these. You will as well. So even when fairness is at stake, to see key appointed officials, not elected officials, appointed officials, making decisions that are unfair, sometimes we have to stand up. I'll give you a case in point. When I was a finance director at a city, I was responsible to collect the DUI fees, as we call them. Anytime that a police officer pulled somebody over for a DUI, we had to send a bill to that individual for anywhere from $400 to $500 or $600. And I had to do that as a matter of practice. But what happened during one of my finance director meetings with other colleagues in the county, I found out that there was another gentleman that went and protested this DUI. He used a section of either the government code or the penal code, I forget what section of the California code he was using, that stated that the city could only pursue cost recovery for DUI, in other words, to have an officer respond and arrest this individual if there was an accident. So one day at a meeting with the department head meeting with the city manager and city attorney and others that were there, I mentioned this back to the group, and I said that I had certain people that would come in and protest the fees based on this court case precedent from another city where we could not bill for DUI fees and collect these from individuals who had not been involved in an accident. And I felt really bad because there were people that refused to pay the DUI, and the others, which was mostly black and Latino people, that they would just pay it and they make payment arrangements and so forth. And I didn't think it was fair because we shouldn't treat people differently. But my city attorney, trying to intimidate, he came up to me and says, "John, you got to collect this because it's the law." And I said, wait, hold on a second here. I may not be an attorney like you, but you know what? I can read, I can add, I can subtract. No, I don't buy that. We got to treat everybody fairly and the same. He didn't like that. But in the interest of fairness, I had to stand up to him. And obviously, you can be labeled a troublemaker, but that's just the cost of being somebody who's making change. So needless to say that that was considered. But that's me, baby boomer, and all the baby boomers. We're almost gone. Okay, there's very few of us left who's still in local government. You millennials, you're in charge. You're the boss now. The time has come for millennials. So we baby boomers, we did some good things and then we did some things not so well. But I want to have you keep something in mind, millennials. We baby boomers were part of that yes generation. I have to admit, we were raised, a lot of us were raised with spankings. If we talk back to our parents or our elders, we couldn't talk back to teachers, or definitely we're not ever talked back to a police officer. Baby boomers often learned respect for people in authority through fear. On the other hand, millennials have been raised in a very different generation, more comfortable. You can challenge authority easier than we can. I'll tell you, when I was in the second grade, I remember I was throwing little pieces of paper at a cute little girl. And when I was in second grade, and I threw the first one, teacher said, "Stop it." And I liked this girl, so I threw it a second time. And the teacher sent me to the principal's office. This big, tall, white principal said, "Get on my lap right now." and he had this big wooden paddle, thick wooden paddle. I still remember it, had holes in it. And he gave me 10 solid whacks. That hurt. But I'll tell you what, I'd rather get the whacks from that principal than I would from my dad, if the teacher told my dad that I had been disrespectful or didn't obey. But yeah, these are different times. And by the way, my uncles would tell me that they're baby boomers too, but they're of the older baby boomers, that they said that they used to get a whipping if they were ever heard speaking Spanish. There was an English only rule in the schools in Texas, and they used to whip you just for speaking Spanish. So anyways, baby boomer generations have been through that. Yes, sir, obedience, obey is what we were taught. But that's why I believe that you millennials can be the generation that makes positive change within our local government organizations. You're not afraid of speaking up when you see something that you feel is wrong. I had 6 children, and I'll tell you what, the way I had to communicate with them, the way they spoke to me, I would have never dreamed of speaking that way to my parents. So millennials, you know, you may be criticized for speaking up, but you keep doing it. We need people who speak up. Again, respectfully, I'm saying, following the chain of command and within your professional craft. But again, this is something that we recognize is a difference in quality between millennials and baby boomers. So don't follow us baby boomers, okay? These are different times. So again, talking about baby boomers, we had a good ride. Scoot over boomers, time for the millennials. The second main point that I wanted to talk about briefly is the entrepreneurial spirit can re-energize government. You know, you've got to have skin in the game. You have got to have sweat equity in the changes that you're making. That's entrepreneurial thinking. You got to risk a little bit for the benefit of the organization and the community served by the organization. The millennial generation was raised, you know, with a lot of technology and innovation. Therefore, creativity is one of your strengths and the traits that you have that I value very much. From the moment you could push a button or use a keyboard, millennials have had amazing tools at their fingertips. With computers at home and in the classroom and having access to smartphones and tablets and so forth, you millennials are part of a generation that quickly learned to use technology for education and for entertainment. As a result, you're extremely comfortable with navigating new technology and experimenting with what it can do, and also incorporating it into the professional applications of serving in local government. So the growth of the internet and the absolute explosion of online platforms, including social media, has allowed you millennials to an incredible variety of instructional and cultural experiences. You're energized by what you see others doing and you collaborate online. This has opened your eyes to endless possibilities and synergy value in working together. This is something we baby boomers in our generation never had. So you have a very can-do attitude. You believe that everything is possible, and it is. So keep in mind, the entrepreneurial spirit can re-energize government. We need entrepreneurial government activities. There are so many things I can talk about with regard to entrepreneurial government, but I'll leave that for a future City Speak podcast. Needless to say, you millennials need an entrepreneurial spirit to reinvent government from the inside out. The third major point and the last point is that there is a great need for re-engineering government. Re-engineering is not just for the PE, those nerdy math people, the professional engineers and so forth, who design bridges and other structures that are not going to fall. Governments require ongoing re-engineering also of the infrastructure, the administrative infrastructure that's in place to provide services to the communities. Because as communities evolve and the population demographics shift, there's going to be new industries that might come into the city, bringing with it new housing development, the need for more real infrastructure, brick and mortar infrastructure, schools, medical offices, and shopping centers. This means that local government services have to change to meet the demands, and there's a need for innovative and re-engineering that comes into play. And that's quite exciting for you millennials. You're going to have that opportunity to change the way City Hall looks to the community that it serves, the way special districts and the county agencies and other local government organizations. You have the opportunity to redesign and re-engineer all of this. That's so exciting, isn't it? So over time, government statutes and regulations have changed, and they have to continue to change. Whether it's national or state laws, these can impact our local governments with new requirements, mandates, mostly unfunded mandates. So we need to be re-engineering to adapt to these changes that come from the top, from the state, and some even from the federal government. When new policies and procedures are introduced as a result, good government has to be maintained, and that means to innovate for what works best for the organization and for the community. As public administrators who lead and manage local government organizations, we can bring our extensive academic and practical experience to re-engineer government. We can improve service delivery and make it as efficient and effective as possible for the stakeholders of the communities that we serve in our municipality. So in conclusion, with the important task of continually re-engineering local government to meet the needs of the communities who rely on us, having millennials in our workplace is definitely an asset. Millennials, don't change who you are. Don't become us like the baby boomers. Be yourself. There's so much change that's going on right all around us. And obviously you millennials have been the generation of change. There's been more change in your generation than there's been in centuries. And we need to adapt to change to succeed. Just always keep in mind the golden rule. Do unto others, right, as you want to have done unto you. And as you reinvent government, be mindful of that. Change takes time. You have to become a change agent, and that requires a lot of collaboration and communication, interaction by people affected. But the point is to keep pushing forward and making that change happen. Now I know that as you move up in municipal organizations as millennials who are in positions of leadership, or as you move into positions of leadership, I don't want to sugarcoat that it's all great and fun and games. It can be really tough. There are times that you're going to be facing a big train that's coming right at you at 70 miles an hour, and you got to stand there on your principles and on your core values and on things that are important to your career. You've got to have courage to affect change, to be one of those millennials that reinvents government, makes changes from the inside out. And as I said, it's lonely at the top. There's times that you can feel pretty exhausted. And a lot of us are exhausted right now, I think. This whole COVID thing has got us exhausted. Our communities are exhausted. We're tired of all this. So you've got to remember, like Stephen Covey said, you got to remember to sharpen the saw. Take time to sharpen your saw. If you need a day or two, just take off. Go and meditate. If you're not at your best, you're not going to do your best. So I know that some of you right now are facing a lot of challenges. A lot of you millennials are facing the challenges of pressures and so forth. There is a way for you to be empowered, to move forward, to have the courage to keep standing up for what is right. What I did was, when I faced a lot of challenges, in conclusion, I have to say this, I hid behind the licenses. Oh, it's my CPA license that says we have to do it this way. Best practices. The Government Finance Officers Association, the California Society of Municipal Finance Officers, the American Society for Public Administration, the International City Manager Association, all these best practices and the Code of Ethics says that we need to do things this way. sometimes, the managers and the chief executives that are in the highest level of decision making call on you to do something that you're not in agreement with. So we sometimes need to hide behind these standards. Like I said, our licenses, best practice, code of ethics. Also, institute policies. Be proactive and put policies in place on how you deal with developers. How do you deal with new vendors? How do you deal with any outside influences? So remember what I said. Think about your career, your job as a public administrator. It's more than a job. It's more than a career. It's your craft. Perfect it. Be the best at it, and be proud of it. And then, as you look at all the baby boomers, who should pretty much be gone by now, but say this to the baby boomers: lead, follow, or get out of the way, because millennials are now in charge. And I wish you well as you look at reinventing government from the inside out. I know you can do this, and thank you for listening in on this City Speak podcast and video blog, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the City Speak podcast. Tune in next time, where we will talk again about everything relevant to stakeholders at City Hall and municipal government organizations.